Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I am Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Israeli strikes across Gaza Strip kills at least 23 Palestinians. This as Israeli military expands evacuation orders to tens of thousands of residents across the enclave. The US and Ukraine conclude a second round of ceasefire talks in Saudi Arabia after Moscow wraps up discussions with Washington without any breakthrough. South Sudan's vice president accuses Uganda of violating an arms embargo with airstrikes in the country and calls for UN intervention. He says Uganda's military action jeopardizes the 2018 peace deal that ended South Sudan's civil war. Japan says it backs close security cooperation with South Korea and India in the Indo-Pacific, days after the Philippines military chief urged New Delhi and Seoul to join the informal Quad alliance to counter Beijing in the South China Sea. And deadly wildfires that erupted over the weekend continue to ravage southeastern South Korea, forcing thousands to evacuate. The fires have burned thousands of hectares and claimed 4 lives. Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest developments from Sudan, where a growing diplomatic rift with neighboring Chad and South Sudan is further escalating regional tensions. Now, Chad and South Sudan have strongly condemned threats made by a top Sudanese general who suggested Sudan might take military action against both countries, raising fears of a wider regional conflict. Over the weekend, Sudanese General Yasir Al-Atta declared in a broadcast that Sudan would retaliate against the UAE, South Sudan and Chad's president, Mohamed Debi. Now, he specifically labeled Chad's airports in N'Djamena and the Andras as legitimate military targets. The general also accused South Sudan of harbouring traitors. In response, Chad strongly condemned the remarks, warning they could be interpreted as a quote-unquote declaration of war. Now, N'Djamena warned that such rhetoric could lead to a dangerous escalation across the region, adding that it reserves the right to respond vigorously to any act of aggression. Now, South Sudan issued a similar statement, calling the comments a blatant violation of international law. Juba reaffirmed its commitment to peace, but warned it would take all necessary measures to defend its sovereignty. This diplomatic rift comes as the Sudan army continues to accuse the UAE of supplying drones to the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, its main rival in the nearly 2-year civil war. The UAE has consistently denied these charges, even as the UN experts and US lawmakers presented credible evidence to the contrary. Sudan has taken its case to the UN Security Council and the International Court of Justice, accusing Abu Dhabi of complicity in genocide against the Masalit ethnic group in Darfur. Further escalating tensions, Sudan has also accused Chad of facilitating weapons deliveries from the UAE to the RSF. Similarly, it has accused South Sudan of arming the paramilitary forces. Both N'Djamena and Juba have repeatedly denied these claims. Meanwhile, Chad has accused Sudan of decades of attempts to destabilize its government, including allegedly supporting rebellions and the Boko Haram terrorists. But since April of 2023, Sudan itself is in turmoil. The war between Sudan's army, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the RSF, led by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, has displaced millions since it erupted 2 years ago. In recent days, the conflict has intensified after the Sudanese army recaptured the presidential palace from the RSF. Burhan has vowed to completely liberate the North African country from the enemies.
في الشهر المبارك ده أن قواتنا تتقدم بخطاوي ثابتة عشان تكمل تحرير السودان. نحن نوعد عبركم الشعب السوداني أنه نحن ماشيين. المعركة دي ما حتقيف، ماشيين. ما حنغير الطريقة اللي ماشيين فيه ولا ما حنغيره. ما حنتراجع ولا حنتأخر. حنواصل لغاية النهاية.
The ongoing civil war has reportedly killed 150,000 people, displaced over 12 million, put at least 8 million on the brink of starvation, and nearly 25 million, which is around half of Sudan's population, suffered dire food insecurity. As fighting escalates, Sudan's war is not only devastating millions at home, but is also straining ties with its neighbors. With no clear path to peace, the region is increasingly facing an uncertain future. Now, for more insights on this, we have with us Charles Boissel, a Central Africa analyst for International Crisis Group, who is joining us live from Nairobi in Kenya. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, how credible is Sudan's threat to attack Chad's airports, and what might be the regional or international consequences if it follows through?
So we think that an open attack on Chadian airports by the Sudanese Army's Air Force would be quite surprising at this stage, because it would push Chad to become even more involved in the Sudanese conflict and to give even more support to the opposing camp, the Rapid Support Forces. And Chad has a very powerful army, so it could represent a big threat. And for the moment, Chad only allows the United Arab Emirates to deliver arms from its territory and officially displays a position of neutrality. But an open attack by the Sudanese Air Force could prompt the Chadian president to increase its support or even to send troops to Darfur, which would be a very bad thing for the Sudanese armed force.
Yeah.
However, it's possible that the Sudanese armed force may support Chadian rebel or Chadian opponent of Déby. It's a long history between the two countries. As a reminder, in 2006 and 2008, Chadian rebel columns came from Darfur, and they were supported by the Sudanese army, and they tried to take power in Chad. And such a scenario could happen again in the future. Actually, there are at least several hundred Chadian rebels currently fighting the Rapid Support Forces in Darfur, in particular in the city of El Fasher. And El Fasher is a city quite close to the Chadian border. So if the Sudanese army wants to take revenge on Chad, it could support such rebel groups to carry out attack in eastern Chad. Even if, for the moment, this rebel group do not seem to have the power or the strength to threaten the Chadian capital, N'Djamena. So in short, it would be counterproductive for the Sudanese army to enter into an open war against Chad, and it is more likely that the country will fight each other through proxy groups.
Right. And Charles, given the accusations against the UAE and South Sudan, how do the external actors complicate efforts to de-escalate the Sudanese civil war and prevent further regional spillover?
Yeah, in fact, so maybe one of the main enabler and sponsor is the United Arab Emirates. It's the main sponsor of the Rapid Support Forces, with massive financial and armed support since the start of the war. Without Emirati aid, the Rapid Support Forces would maybe have almost no chance of holding out against the Sudanese armed force. And this support is implying other neighboring countries, because the Rapid Support Forces does not have an access to a sea front. So the Emirati weapons have to be delivered through the border of neighboring countries, in particular Chad and South Sudan. And with their almost unlimited financial resources, the United Arab Emirates had no trouble convincing this country to do so.
Right.
And but know that.
Thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost. Right, Charles, thank you very much for your valued insights there and for being with us on Firstpost Africa.
Thank you.
Shifting focus to the latest updates in the DR Congo conflict. Angola, which has served as the mediator between the DRC government and the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels for nearly 2 years, has now announced it is stepping down from the role. Angola cites frustration over the lack of commitment from both parties to adhere to peace talks as the reason for its decision. A statement from the Angolan presidency mentions that despite its attempts to broker direct peace talks between the DRC government and the rebels, these efforts have failed. Now, as a result, Angola will now shift its focus to its role as chair of the African Union, a position it assumed just last month. Angola had been leading the African Union-backed mediation process since early 2023, with President João Lourenço appointed to facilitate peace. However, its mediation efforts have faced repeated challenges, leading to multiple failed ceasefire attempts. In March of 2023, a truce brokered by Angola collapsed shortly after it began, prompting Angola to deploy troops to the DRC's east. In December of 2024, a planned summit aimed at bringing the DRC government and the M23 rebels to the negotiating table did not materialize. Then, just days ago, the latest Angolan-mediated talks in the capital of Luanda were aborted at the last minute after the M23 rebels withdrew following the EU-imposed sanctions on their leaders. Angola's decision to withdraw comes at a critical moment in the conflict, as the M23 rebels have made significant territorial gains in a lightning advance since January. At least 7,000 people have been reportedly killed in the escalating violence. A little hope was ignited last week when the presidents of the DRC and Rwanda held surprise talks in Qatar. However, these informal talks did not aim to replace the existing peace efforts. Soon after the Doha meeting, the M23 rebels captured another town in eastern DRC, but later announced that they would withdraw as a peace gesture. Despite this, the troops remain on the ground. With Angola stepping aside, the future of mediation efforts remains uncertain. While a successor has not yet been announced, the African Union plans to work with regional organizations such as the South African Development Community, or SADC, and the East African Community, or the EAC, to identify a suitable candidate. The two organizations are also involved in peace efforts in the conflict. As per reports, potential mediators could include neighboring countries with a vested interest in regional stability, such as Kenya or Tanzania, which are both members of the EAC. But no timeline has been given for the new appointments. Angola's withdrawal as the mediator in the DRC conflict marks a turning point in the ongoing crisis, leaving a critical gap in diplomatic efforts. With no immediate successor announced, uncertainty looms over the future of peace talks. And shifting focus to the Horn of Africa, as talks to recognize Somalia's breakaway region, Somaliland, gain momentum in the United States, Mogadishu has been thrown into a state of alarm. Reports indicate that the Somali government is actively reaching out to prominent figures in the United States, including Elon Musk, to influence the U.S. policy in the Horn of Africa. Now, Mogadishu has reportedly engaged with Musk and prominent religious ministers as part of a broader strategy to garner support against the recognition of Somaliland's independence. Somaliland is a breakaway region of Somalia, but seeks full independence. Currently, no country recognizes it as a sovereign state. However, its strategic geographic location could serve its interests, particularly the Berbera port, which sits along the vital Red Sea trade route. Now, discussions have reportedly begun on a potential deal, one that could see Somaliland's recognition in exchange for a U.S. military base near the Berbera port. This base could provide crucial for the U.S. in its fight against the Houthi rebels, who continue to target Red Sea shipping lanes. The base could also be used to counter Chinese influence in the region. Now, both the U.S. and Israel have also reached out to Somaliland, considering it as a potential resettlement location for Palestinians uprooted from Gaza under Donald Trump's post-war plan. But Somaliland has set a clear condition. It will not engage in any resettlement deal unless its independence is formally recognized. Meanwhile, influential figures in the United Kingdom have also advocated for Somaliland's recognition. This includes the former British Defence Secretary, Gavin Williamson, who emphasises that Somaliland's stability and democratic governance warrant formal recognition. As Somaliland gains Western support, Mogadishu is reportedly going to great lengths to block its recognition. The Somali embassy in Washington has hired BGR Group, one of the top lobbying firms in the U.S., offering a $50,000 per month for a year to advocate against Somaliland's recognition. Now, Somali officials have also been engaging closely with Donald Trump's inner circle, including Pastor Mark Burns, an evangelical leader and one of Trump's most vocal supporters. He recently met with Somalia's foreign minister to discuss strengthening relations. Speaking of Trump's close allies, Somalia is also courting SpaceX founder Elon Musk, who now serves as the head of the U.S. Department of Government Efficiency under the new administration. Somalia's U.S. ambassador has held high-level meetings with senior SpaceX officials, part of a strategy to persuade Elon Musk to bring Starlink to Somalia. But observers believe that Mogadishu's ultimate goal is to leverage Musk's close ties to Trump in hopes of influencing U.S. policy in its favor. Will Mogadishu succeed in convincing the Trump administration? Or will Trump's era usher in a new chapter for Somaliland? We will continue to get you more updates on this. And for our final story today, we turn to West Africa, where Ghana has arrested its former security chief over the weekend for allegedly skimming millions of dollars from a cybersecurity contract. Now, Kwabena Adubohene, the country's former National Signals Bureau, or the NSB Director General, is accused of diverting funds from a $7 million contract meant to strengthen Ghana's cybersecurity infrastructure. Authorities say that Adubohene was apprehended for allegedly diverting funds from a cyber defense systems contract signed in January of 2020 with Israeli firm RLC Holdings Limited. And the deal was designed to bolster Ghana's ability to combat cyber threats, data breaches, and digital espionage. However, investigators from the state agency Economic and Organized Crime Office found that the funds were instead channeled into private accounts linked to Abu Dhabi and his wife. Now, authorities say that shortly after the contract was signed, Abu Dhabi was transferred more than 27 million Ghanaian cedis, so $1.7 million, from the NSB's accounts to a private one. The couple then used additional diverted funds to acquire multiple properties in Ghana and abroad. Now, they remain in detention as investigators identify other potential suspects. Their lawyer claims that their fundamental human rights have been violated. The case comes as Ghana steps up its anti-corruption drive, with several high-profile officials, especially from the previous Nana Akufo-Addo government, under investigation. Now, under President John Mahama, who took charge in January of this year, Ghana has intensified its crackdown on public sector corruption in an effort to reassure international investors and to stabilize the economy. The Ghanaian government has been negotiating with the International Monetary Fund for financial support, with governance reforms among the key conditions. As a result, it has been expediting legal proceedings in its anti-graft campaign. In recent weeks, former Finance Minister Yasir Al-Atta has come under scrutiny for alleged irregularities in government bond issuances. Now, additionally, the government is reviewing a payroll fraud scandal at Ghana's National Service Secretariat, where over 81,000 ghost names were allegedly used to siphon millions from state coffers. Now, as these investigations unfold, attention now shifts to the legal process and its outcome. With several high-profile cases under review, the government's handling of corruption will be closely watched. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.